And so we turned our backs on the river, mainly because the railroads took over that spot. And now with the railroads, you know, the decline of the railroads and industry, which sat up by the river because they could use the water where they dumped all the pollution in. So when Norm came in and we looked at the river, let's change the relationship we have with the river. Let's suddenly not make it our sewer and something that we turn our backs on. It's just an impediment to getting over to Dakota County. Let's reconnect to what was really our original lifeline and our reason for being. And it was I think it was a brilliant thing. And as a result, Harriet Island was redone, and Raspberry Island was redone. We have houses now on the river where we once had a junkyard for cars. The transformation has been enormous, and for people who live down on the river, it's an extraordinary experience.
Yet still a great deal of it is undeveloped or needs redeveloped.
Underdeveloped,
Yeah.
and some of it's going to be developed into parkland. So I'm very. It's been an exciting trip on that Riverfront Corporation.
Now, you've been on such a wide variety of boards. Can you tell us
Yeah.
tell us about the scandalous experience inside them?
Well, there isn't any. I mean, I wish I knew some. Maybe I just was.
But you were on the Science Museum?
Yeah, that was another. There's another thing that Norm. This is not an advertisement for Norm, but he did a good thing there. I was on the Science Museum board when it was in its downtown location, and we'd outgrown it. The institution had to move or die. It couldn't stay where it was, and the big question was, where are we going to move it? And one option was being across the river on the river flats across from downtown St. Paul. And some were in favor of that, but others felt that that was too far removed, that was not going to be a good location for a new museum. And there was a possibility of putting it in its present site across from the Excel Center. But to do that, we'd have to move some streets. It would take some city government cooperation. And the mayor at the time just really wasn't interested. And then Norm was elected, and he immediately said, sure, we'll move the river. That's where the Science Museum should be. So I give Norm Coleman considerable credit in saying that, yes, that is the vision, having it right there. The library is there, Rice Park is there. It makes it cohesive, and he found ways to make the infrastructure changes. So that was a very big thing. We were the second Omni Theater to be built. The first one was in California, and the builder of that moved here to oversee the building of this Omni Theater, which was kind of the cash cow for a long time. Keeping it, bringing the money in. But that was a wise decision that was made.
But you've also been on the board of public radio.
Oh, yeah.
Regents Hospital?
Yeah.
Tell me something about either of them.
Well, I have great patience. I go back a long time with Minnesota Public Radio. Its offices were down in a building on Mears Park, and that's when I first went on the board. And then I was on the board when we built I still identify with NPR when NPR built their large building, and so it was great fun to watch that grow.
And are you currently on the Board of Regents?
No, okay. I've never. No, I'm on the Regents Candidate Advisory Council.
Yes.
It's a commission set up by the legislature to recruit and recommend candidates for regents for the university.
Okay.
And trustees for MinSCU.
Tell us, you mentioned before James J. Hill, but you've also done a book on his second son, third child?
Yeah, that's right. You've got it. Louis Warren. Louis, yes, it's not Louis, it's Louis.
Okay.
Louis Warren Hill. He was the third child, second son of Mary Teresa and James J. Hill. And he ended up inheriting his father's legacy. Took over the Great Northern Railroad, three other railroads actually, the banking system, convinced his father to invest in the iron ore in northeastern Minnesota. He was very instrumental in founding Glacier. He was a behind-the-scenes operator, but it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Louis Warren Hill. What a guy.
And now that railroad runs right around the perimeter of the park.
That's right. That's why he had to be very careful in Washington. If no one, this is very interesting, everyone kind of knows that Louis was the prime mover in getting Glacier Park through the Congress of the time. There's not one piece of paper that anybody has ever found with his name on it that said he did it. But it was very obvious that the Great Northern ran right along the southern border of what would be Glacier Park. And if that congressman had, looked at a map, they'd have said, oh no, this is self-service on Lewis's part of which certainly was true. But he was a lover of the mountains. He wanted it. And the Santa Fe Railroad, at least it was the Santa Fe, and two other railroads. One had the Grand Canyon as its great draw, and the other had Yellowstone Park. And he thought, hey, I want a park for my railroad. And that was really how he thought. And he looked at those mountains in Montana, and it is a gorgeous park. But the great thing is that he helped get it appropriated by Congress, and they named by Congress, and they appropriated $15,000 to build the park. And so he took his own money in. He spent $10 for every buck the federal government spent. He designed the hotels, took his own money and his own equipment, built the roads. The whole thing he even picked the flowers to plant in the gardens. He was down to the towels in the restrooms. I mean, he was a great detail man, and he did it all.
You're watching the St. Paul Forum. In case you're just joining us, I'm guest host John Forde, and I'm interviewing author and historian Billie Young about St. Paul and our lovely history.
I'm not letting you get a word in, am I?
Oh, you're doing just fine. Okay. Now tell us about the redevelopment of Grand Avenue. You owned a business on Grand Avenue at one point.
Yeah, that goes back a long time. My neighbor was a woman named Mary Wilson. When we bought a house in Crocus Hill, we lived at number 15 and she lived at number 10. So we became sort of coffee friends. And both of us were a little bored with going to meetings and such, and so we decided to go to Mexico, buy full cart, bring it back, and have a sale. That was our big idea. So we did it. And the sale was on the 3rd floor of my house, and it was quite successful. And so when it was over, we looked at each other and said, what do we do next? And we thought, let's do a shop on Grand Avenue. And Grand Avenue at the time was, it didn't quite have grass growing between the bricks on the street, but it was very quiet. Stores kept their doors locked, and the customer had to knock on the door to get in. This would have been in 1972, 71 or 2. So there was a wig shop that was going out of business in part of the Hamlin Auto Body that shows the incongruous use of buildings. So for $125 a month, we rented the Hamlin Auto Body and started the Old Mexico shop there. And I kept it for 22 years.
Wow. And
we were instrumental in the renaissance of Grand Avenue. It didn't stay in the Hamlin Auto Body shop forever. It ended up in Victoria Crossing. But it was successful, and it led the way that other entrepreneurs could come in and establish themselves. Now Grand Avenue is marked by national chains, but originally it was all small entrepreneurs which offered a variety of shopping and restaurant experiences. It was quite a ride.
Now, you have a good antenna for what's real, as well as a good semantic sense. To what extent was that semantic? Is gentrification an okay word?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
To what extent was the gentrification of Grand Avenue a bottom-up process, and to what extent was it coordinated by government?
Oh, no. Government had practically nothing to do with it. It was a total serendipitous occurrence of well, a lot of things happened all at once. The great fear that somehow the town was going to deteriorate died off. People suddenly felt like this is going to be a good neighborhood, and so people weren't leaving. We had a great champion on the street. There was a dentist called Dr. Chop, a terrible name for a dentist.
Dr. Chop.
Chop, right?
Okay.
And he took responsibility for the street, and it all happened because of an incident. He had hired a dental hygienist to work for him, and his office was right at the corner of Grand and Dale, right on Grand Avenue at the Dale intersection. And the morning came when the young woman was to report for work, and she didn't show up. So he called her home, and the mother answered the phone, and she said, well, that's too dangerous. I'm not going to let my daughter work there.